Single responsibility principle. Everyone has an opinion about it, don't you think? In this video I will show you one specific problem where only a meticulous application of this principle will save my domain model. Without it, I will quickly get into a situation where I won't be able, I'll repeat, I won't be able to implement a requested feature. A catastrophe, a nightmare. But after separating responsibilities, implementing that complicated feature will be a walk in the park. Let me show you the feature I need first, and then we will spend the rest of this demo doing code. This is the demo application which is selling books, and here's the feature I want to develop. This one has a 10% discount. Look how nice label there is. 10% discount on all books. Nice string, remember that. But the system of discounts is full of complex rules. Look at this one. 20% discount when pattern in the title. An interesting kind of a discount. And another example before we get to code, 30% discount when pattern appears in the title, authored by Martin Fowler specifically. So this is the discount that applies to books from a single author that also mention pattern. You can imagine how complicated the rules are behind this one line of output. That is what I want to have. And as I said, you can imagine how complicated it is to calculate discounts when there are so many fine-grained rules. This is the discount interface. Every concrete discount will have to implement this interface and to be able to produce the lines that should be shown in the UI. This is one implementation just to give you the impression. It is the null object pattern implementation. It does nothing. When asked for the discount, it just says empty sequence. There's nothing to apply to this book. But actual implementations that do stuff will be more complicated than this. Here is one simple concrete implementation of the iDiscount interface, the relative discount. But even this one is non-trivial. It returns nothing when the input price is 0, so it avoids to return a single line with the 0 amount in it. But more complexity is around the corner. Title contains a substring, a very special discount, which lets us isolate the books with certain word or combination of words in the title. This class is already exhibiting a couple of drawbacks which I will want to fix. But stay here for a moment, pause the video if you like. Read this class carefully and think. What are the drawbacks of this class? What are the problems it is already exhibiting deep inside the code? What are the inabilities caused by this class? That is the puzzle for you. Let me show you a similar one. Books by a certain author. Here is one problem with that class before. This one is almost an exact copy and paste of the class you saw a moment ago, with only a few things changed in it. The worst kind of copy and paste. Subtle differences. What if something is wrong with that implementation? Well, now it is wrong in 2 places in the codebase. Now here is what is duplicated in the 2 classes. In the free classes, the relative discount also has the multiplying factor. They all have the string showing the factor, formatting it, and then the calculation of the amount of the discount, which is the domain logic. Someone might call and say, do it differently. Now I have to do it differently in 3 places. What do you think about this way of implementing domain classes? Do you do it this way? Write down in the comment. I want to hear your opinion about that. And what do you do when things start going downhill? What do you do to fix a class like this? I will now start fixing this class and the other classes as well. But before that, I have a game for you. If you don't like the way I made this class, then press the like button, please. Thank you. That will bring in more people like you, I guess. If you do like this coding style, then make sure to watch the rest of the video, because I will show you what's wrong and how to fix it. Here it begins. This is what I want to outline, the final blow that design cannot sustain. This is the demo server which produces a concrete instance of the iDiscount interface. This is not production code, don't get me wrong. This will be the playground where I will show you the capabilities and the lack of capabilities of that system of classes I have. So here is the request. I want this server to produce an instance implementing iDiscount which applies to all the books by a specific author, written by the specific author, that also contain a certain substring in their title. So it's a combination of the two conditions we have in those classes, but neither one of them can do both. And I cannot combine them into one object which does both. So I would either have to redesign all those classes I have, or add a new class which does two things together. But what happens when the customers ask for a different combination? Will I add yet another class with that combination? Well, that is called combinatorial explosion of classes. If you start adding more and more and more responsibilities into classes that are doing multiple things because you cannot combine the objects of smaller classes, then you have the syndrome of the combinatorial explosion of classes, and in an enterprise-grade application with hundreds of concrete implementations of that interface, you're doomed. You will be looking for a new job very soon. I will show you a better way now. The root cause of the problem that I have just outlined is that this class in particular is doing multiple things. It has more than one responsibility. I will start creating small classes with a single responsibility per class, and you will see, by combining the objects, the instances of those SRP classes, we will be able to complete that request to implement, to construct the objects which are implementing wildly different conditions before calculating the concrete discount amount. There will be a lot of code here, so let me tell you, if you want to read the code that I will produce, the code is available to sponsors of my channel, so become the sponsor, help me keep the channel free for everyone else, and get access to all the code from all the videos on this channel. There is the link to my Patreon page in the pinned comment. Visit me there and become the sponsor. Thank you. Let's begin now. The first step. I want to remove the responsibility how the discount is being calculated. I see the principal responsibility of this class. This method here is something this class should be doing, and pretty much the only thing this class should be capable of doing. Nobody else in the codebase knows how to construct this Boolean expression, can you imagine? But that's the point. Identify the single responsibility and stick to it. Don't let the class do anything else but that one thing. And now, what did I mean with that to remove the calculation of the discount? Let me show you. Instead of having the factor here, I will wrap another discount. So that discount will apply when the book is authored by the specific author. That's the secret of this class. The constructor becomes trivial, no validation anymore, because validation of the factor is done in that relative discount concrete implementation, you know. That is where the multiplying factor belongs, and the validation of that value. But what about this? Oh, this method is... I can't read it. It is doing at least two things. I see that it is testing for 0 money before quitting, which means that this class had 3 responsibilities identified so far. Why not say that testing for zero money is somebody else's responsibility? Let me show you. This is the new class which is only testing whether the money, the price on the input is positive, because if it is not, then whatever the discount is, it doesn't apply. And so back in that class, this test is now superfluous. Delete it. But how do we know that it will execute? Here is the secret. An instance of this class will always have to be wrapped into an instance of that class which tests the price. So only after we make sure that the price is positive at the runtime shall this class get an opportunity, an object of this class get an opportunity to execute its own logic. And what is its own logic? What about this test? Does it belong here? Again, another trick question. This call here is testing whether this discount applies to the context which was passed by the caller, and that context, among other things, contains the book which someone wants to buy. It is one thing to know when this discount applies, and the second responsibility, to exercise that test, to do it at runtime. Yes, that is the fourth responsibility found in that simple class. Let me show you the way out. Meet the base class, which I have called restricted discount. It will be the base for all the discounts which need to test their applicability to the context in which they execute. It doesn't know whether it is applicable or not. That is the abstract method left to the implementation to the derived class. But there is one detail missing here. This discount is also appending to the label to explain its own part in calculating the final discount amount. The base class should support that, so I will inject the suffix into it. But how do I append suffixes to all the lines produced? By this method? That sounds like somebody else's job to do, right? Let me show you. Another class. A class which is extending these discount applications, those lines that will be rendered in the UI. And what service do I need? Well, I need something that will append suffixes. So the discount applications, the sequence of them, with a suffix in every one of them. You don't want this expression anywhere else. That's the point of this whole demonstration. Whatever there is to do, find the one whose job that is, and let that one do it. So that here back, where I want to add suffixes to all the lines pushed to the output, I do it this way, like a sir. Just say with suffix, this one. Don't make any logic here, don't add anything here. Do you get my point? Whatever you need, it's always somebody else's job to do, except a single responsibility which belongs here. And what will this class look like in the end? The discount that only applies to books by a single author. It would inherit from the restricted discount abstract class. The constructor is even simpler than it was, but also it will have to format the suffix and pass it to the base so that the suffix can be appended to all the output items. Applies to will be the implementation of the abstract method, nothing to change, just change its declaration. And what about the largest method here? What about this, what will I call it? I really don't like, I never liked this method, it's awful. Nothing, delete it. It is implemented in the base class. It is somebody else's job to do. Now this class implements a single responsibility. And do you know what that responsibility is? To tell whether the book has the author as expected, and to write it down in form of the suffix appended to the label when displaying the result to the user. That's the single responsibility. Remember this class, it is testing whether the book's title contains a substring. It also has those same 4 responsibilities we have identified in the other class. What will it look after deriving it from that same base class, restricted discount? Here, a single responsibility again. Just manage the title substring and nothing more. The last step will be to demonstrate how these classes work. That is the pinnacle of this demonstration, which I suppose will finally bring you to my side and make you believe that this way of doing things is more powerful than the one with which I have started. Instead of the discount factor injected from the outside, I will inject an author. I want to filter books by the author. But remember, this is the demo class. This is not production code, so I can do anything I want here. I can inject a very special author, and listen, I will request Martin Fowler here. Called the field Martin Fowler. Have you ever seen this? And here comes that pinnacle of this demo. This is the place where I will have to compose many small objects to implement a very complicated system of logic that will filter the books out by several joint criteria and decide which exact discount applies to which book. Very complicated set of requests, many nested constructors. If you want to create it here, that wouldn't fit this screen, I'm sorry. There is a simple way to avoid calling nested constructors via extension factory methods. I have made the entire video only on that topic, so please watch that video, which will show you how you can create a system of factory methods, static factory methods, extension methods on the arguments to avoid messy constructor calls. That is a very important tactical coding trick, which I have also applied here while you were not watching. And I have all those factory methods ready, all the supporting static classes there. And I will only show you how you can create a complicated composition of objects that works just right. An example, a discount on books that mention patterns. Here, this is the method that should return an iDiscount doing that. It is a relative discount instance with specified factor, and then I would have to wrap it into another instance, but I have an extension method for that. When positive price. And another one, when title contains the word pattern. This chain of calls will return a composition of 3 objects nested one inside the other. But you don't see the complexity of doing that here. Now, to get the final discount that applies to all the books in the database, that will require a much more complicated composition, so let's start with it. Get pattern books discount of 30%, but only when the book is authored by Martin Fowler. That is another extension method which will wrap the result of the first call into yet another decorator, yet another wrapping discount implementation. That one which tests the author, you know. But what if this discount, this complex discount, doesn't apply? Well, I have added one more discount concrete implementation and the appropriate extension method, which I called or else. So that discount or else what? Get pattern books discount 20%. So if it's not the parents book by Martin Fowler, then just look if it is only about parents and apply 20% off of it. Or else a relative discount 10%. Now look at this. On all books. This is the cherry on top of my cake. Do you know what this final call is doing? I will show you that when I start the application. Look here. This is the same application running, and this time it does have that feature I wanted. Here I have selected the Object-Oriented Software Construction book by Bert and Meyer, my all-time favorite book on programming. Since it is not by Martin Fowler and doesn't mention patterns, there is only 10% discount on this book. But look here, on all books, this part of the string was produced by the object, constructed by that final call on all books, that extension method. So this label is the result of executing two objects in succession. The first one, the relative discount, made this part of the label 10% discount, and then the second, the wrapper around that object, added on all books, so now the label is complete. Let me find the Gang of 4 book. It comes with 20% discount this time, because it mentions pattern. Look, this second part of the label again is appended by the other object. Again, 20% discount created by the relative discount class or object of that class, and the rest created by the object that wraps around, appended as the suffix. And the most complicated case, Patterns of Enterprise Application Architecture by Martin Fowler. Here is Martin Fowler and the book that does mention patterns in its name, in its title. So it is 30% off, and read the label again. One part created by the relative discount object, a very simple object. Then, when pattern in the title, appended by the second object around it, and the rest authored by Martin Fowler, dynamically generated part of the label, appended at the end by the third object in line. I rest my case. I can do anything I want with this system of classes, but what is critical about this design is that every single class is implementing just a single responsibility and nothing more. Use this method in your designs, in your domain models. Enjoy programming and come back again when the new video appears on my channel. See you later.